Kate the Earthling actually started as my Instagram handle years ago, way before my artwork began. But as far as my artwork, in 2016, I graduated from graduate school. I was studying real estate development and, learning all about building buildings. And one of the electives that I took was called Green Communities. And that is where I learned about, green roofs, green walls, all these different things, and the concept of biophilia, which is, the love of life and humans' connection to nature. And that was something that I just immediately connected with because my whole childhood I was in nature. I loved it. And learning about that at school was kind of putting a word to how I had always felt. And I took that after I graduated and really decided that that was kind of what I wanted to pursue was biophilic design. And I wasn't totally sure how I wanted to do that, but I just knew that was my path. So I began working in real estate after I graduated, and at nighttime and on the weekends, I started experimenting making plant walls and making them for my friends, making them for my family, just for fun, and testing out different ways of making plant walls with living plants. And that was really fun and very experimental, but at first I would create these pieces for my friends and then they would die after I gave them to people because they wouldn't take care of them or they didn't have, the proper lighting or whatever it was. And so I decided to kind of experiment with preserved plants. And that's when I started, making moss walls and trying to focus on something in that way that was preserved that people didn't necessarily have to take care of. And it was much more creative. You could do so many different things with it that I felt like you couldn't do with live plants. So I started making all sorts of things like that and started off very small, just with little Etsy shop and making little pieces in my dining room and in my living room. And it really grew from there to what it is today, which is, I have all sorts of different clients all over the country, but it really started very small in my apartment and just really experimenting. So that's where it began. It really varies from client to client, but essentially, when I start talking with someone, I get a feel for what they're looking for. Sometimes they have a very specific, want, but sometimes they don't. So we just kind of look at their space. Where do they want to display this piece? What is the inspiration behind it? Sometimes people went on a vacation somewhere and they want to have that be the inspiration, whether it's the colors of that place, specific flowers or things like that. Um, so I just start off kind of speaking with them about what do they want this piece, to make them remember or feel like. And then also looking at their physical space. What does the room look like? What is your decor like? And then I design from there. I do hand-drawn sketches of the ideas that I come up with and, go back and forth with my client until we figure out what they love. And then once we do that, I have all the frames made. I have a couple different local people that I work with that make all of my frames custom for each project, whether it's reclaimed wood or it's something more, modern. I have a couple different friends that I work with. And then I have a studio in the city at Crane Arts. And so that's where I create all of my pieces. And I make them all by hand by myself. So I just make them in there and I use preserved mosses. So everything I use is real plants, but it's no longer alive. So it's been harvested and preserved to remain soft and look alive. And I use mostly mosses and ferns and things like that. Sometimes I use different accent elements depending on the project, flowers, mushrooms, rocks. branches, things like that. So once it's created, I get it delivered and installed, and there it is. I wasn't really involved in art growing up. I was in chorus like my whole life. That was my artistic outlet for since I was very young. So I wasn't ever creating like physical pieces of art. And but I was very, very into nature from a very young age. I played outside all the time. I grew up before we had cell phones and things like that, thank God. So I spent so much time outside, and then, as I got older and I was at school and studying real estate and stuff, I still had that very deep passion for nature. I went hiking all the time, and I was very aware of that connection, but I didn't really know anything about biophilia or biophilic design. And I had seen pictures of green roofs and green walls, and I loved them. I just thought they were the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so when I finished school, I thought, real estate is cool, but really what I think is so cool is biophilic design and incorporating nature like into our indoor spaces, because that's where we spend most of our time. And I just thought that was fascinating. So as far as learning how to do it, I really just Googled a lot of stuff, and it was very like DIY arts and crafts. I was getting like glue guns and just messing around really at my house, like buying little frames and getting moss at the craft store, and just glue gunning things on the floor of my apartment. And it was, if I look back at the pieces from the beginning to now, there's a huge improvement in how they looked and how professional they are. So it was definitely a learning curve, but it was just very DIY. Ambler and Bloom, I want to teach people about what biophilia is. I know there's going to be a lot of, nature lovers there, but I think like I loved nature and I knew that, but I didn't really think deeper about why I loved nature and why I felt so connected to it. So I want to talk about that biophilia and the human connection to nature, and then give a little bit about what biophilic design is. What are the principles of it? How can we, as regular people, you don't have to be a full-on architect or a developer. How can a regular person incorporate biophilic design into their own space? So kind of talk a little bit about that, and then talk about my artwork, which is one piece of biophilic design, and how through my art, am trying to share that connection with nature with other people. And then of course I'll have several pieces of my artwork there, and I'll bring examples of different mosses that I use and things like that. So I'm very, very excited. The whole purpose of biophilic design is taking, what we experience out in nature and trying to incorporate that into the indoor space. So it's, one element of it, of course, is plants, having plants inside, but it's definitely a lot more than that. And so there's three kind of categories or principles of it, which is nature in the space, which has a lot of things in it, which can be plants. You can have, multi-sensory things. So you can have the presence of water, the sound of water, that's very soothing. Maybe the sound of birds or things like that. Just nature sound. So a view to nature through your window. So there's the nature in the space, the nature of the space, which is more about um, how are you laying out the space and how does it feel in there? So think about like creating a space of refuge, feeling, like you have a prospect, a view outside, or, I'll get more into this at the event, but, and then the third element is natural analogs. So incorporating different patterns into your space, patterns in nature, different textures of nature. So it doesn't have to just be having a green plant, which can be part of it. That's a good start. But so there's a lot of different multi-sensory elements to biophilic design that, when you incorporate them all, it's just very beneficial. And, the purpose of it is to mimic how we're feeling outside. And it has lots of different benefits that have been studied, increasing your creativity, your, let's see, your focus, your efficiency at work. It has shown to be increasing healing times in hospitals, which is amazing, obviously reducing people's stress. So it has a lot of wonderful benefits to people who are in these kind of spaces, which I love. I feel like, the more that people realize their connection to nature and, think more about why do I have this connection? And okay, what is that doing for me physically, psychologically, emotionally, whatever? You kind of foster a deeper connection and then a deeper appreciation. And I think that will lead to just a better future for the earth and for people in general, especially if these kinds of things are being done with like the younger generation, younger kids. They're going to grow up and have this deeper connection to the earth, which can only be beneficial to us and to nature and plants, animals, everything. So I think just kind of educating people as much as you can about this type of connection and why it's important for us and the earth will just, you know, be a better future in many, many ways. They learn something new about just their connection to nature, number one. I hope that they learn something they can do in their own home or their office or whatever that can kind of add a new element of biophilic design to their own space. And I hope they maybe see a new form of art through my moss walls that they may have never seen before. And maybe they want a moss wall, that would always be great. So, but I'm just really thrilled to just talk with people about this, and I can't wait. So I'm very happy to be a part of it.